City of Johannesburg, which has less than 2 weeks to respond to Treasury's concerns of its financial health. According to the Sunday Times, Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has written to Mayor Dada Morero demanding a plan to curb wasteful expenditure and take action against officials who violated the Municipal Finance Management Act. National Treasury has reportedly also threatened to withhold grant funding if the city's finances aren't brought under control on this issue. All right, now let's talk about this a little bit more because Nqobile Madlala is in the city of Johannesburg to unpack this one then for us then. Nqobile, one thing is for sure, the questions are being asked, and we've just been speaking to the Gauteng Premier, and he says he's happy that a possible response and a way to deal with this will be in sight. But the question is, can everybody at home feel it?
Well, that's very important indeed, Nqobile, because as the officials do say that, and you remember that the Premier is reiterating what he already said on Sunday, you look at the city and you question yourself if those strides are being felt. You're still seeing some of the robots that are not working. You're still seeing some of the service delivery that is not currently functional. And of course, I want to bring in Nqobile to speak to us about those details a little bit more, especially when it comes to service delivery. Do you think there's been a change?
There hasn't been enough of a change. Really, we need to be working on multiple different elements all at the same time. You've got your bomb squads, you've got your presidential working groups, and you've got these monthly major service delivery programs. But at the end of the day, that's just window dressing on what is really the problem, and that is the way that the city is spending and calculating its money.
And you get to sit in council and see and hear these things. Take me through what you think with regards to what Treasury has spoken about.
Council is completely dysfunctional in my opinion. There's the stuff that's supposed to come to council to be debated, to be really interrogated, and the councillors are supposed to add that oversight is not really happening. You basically get whipped and you get told this is where you're going to vote, you vote along party lines, and there's no real analysis of what they're voting on. So for example, the last week's council meetings, they brought the financial reports for January and February of this year. Where are June? That was the end of the financial year. Those have already gone to Treasury, and we're not getting them in council in August. This kind of delaying tactic is a real big problem. And in terms of projects that are supposed to be really good projects, so we're finally opening the Louis Botha Rea Via bus transport system, but they've done a deviation there. They're spending money they shouldn't on procuring buses, which should have been part of the tender, and instead of that being really strongly debated and councillors pushing back on it, it passed.
And there are a couple of projects, of course, that are still ongoing, with one that we have seen also at Bree. These projects are ongoing, and others perhaps being part of this fruitful, non-fruitful expenditure?
So what the minister's really looking at is UIFW. That is your unauthorized, irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that predominantly comes from the fact that though Johannesburg is the biggest city in Africa, really with the biggest budget in Africa, we should be able to attract the kind of people who can do good financial reporting. The city, and by its own admission from its own financial officers, has told me they're budgeting 90 billion rand through Excel spreadsheets. And it's that lack of systems and in oversight that's the real problem. And when we identify that there's been all this wasteful expenditure, that we're spending more to buy services from Rand Water or Eskom, and we're not able to sell that because of the losses, the breakdowns, the theft, the vandalism, all of that kind of stuff that's a real problem, no one's being held accountable. So if you've signed a contract that shouldn't have happened, that you overspent, you paid the contractor before it was due, and you're not able to recoup any of that money, the person who signed that contract should be held liable. But instead, they're shuffled around the city, and we get this instability that's almost by design. So no one can actually be told, your KPIs, your bonus, your actual money, your future in the city is at risk here. None of that happens. And that's why the minister's really getting hands-on here.
All right, and we'll keep a watchful eye on that, Nqobile, as we know that it's now about 13 days that is left for the mayor to be able to account to the minister.